Hi everyone, it's Rob Watson, the module leader for TECH1502 Introduction to Community Media. And this is the overview summary video for the 22nd lecture. And the title for this lecture is Civic Representation. So what we want to cover in this session is ideas about civic engagement, civic participation, the decision-making process that we might expect people to engage in and be part of in a healthy democratic process. So we want to look at some of the issues that surround the idea of civic engagement and civic politics and civic participation, and ask questions about the role of community media in this process. So, kind of debate and discussion and resource allocation are all important parts of our, we pay our taxes, we use social and public services, we invest in business, and we see a return on that, and we have certain expectations about that. But who gets a voice in some of these processes isn't equally distributed. There's an inequality about how we include people and allow people to express their anxiety or their frustration or their satisfaction with the civic democratic processes. So we'll look at this in terms of thinking about the range of issues that kind of frame civic participation. And I'm going to start with Robert Putnam, who wrote the book Bowling Alone, about the kind of the breakdown of community life in America post-World War, or post-1960s actually. And he starts off by saying that citizenship isn't a spectator sport. It's something that we have to be active participants in, and that in order to feel as if we can shape the decision-making process, then it has to be a transparent process as well. But in an age of globalization and globalized decision-making, where your decisions are as likely to be that affect your local community, or maybe as likely to be undertaken in New York or Frankfurt as they are in Leicester, for example, then it's more problematic for people to make sense of the world that they're in. And hence the kind of anxieties about globalisation which are expressed through Brexit and through Trump. So there's a model that we can usefully look to, which is the public sphere model, which is based on the work of Jürgen Habermas, who was a critical theorist who identified what emerged from the 18th century, the introduction of things like coffee houses, was a change in the way that we conduct politics. Previously, politics in Western countries, Northern European countries, had been dominated by rule by monarchs and aristocracy. But with the rise of the kind of trading class, the capitalist class, the bourgeoisie, there was a shift of power and emphasis away from a few anointed, selected members of the royalty and the aristocracy, and there was a broadening out so that traders became an increasing part of this. And Habermas kind of locates this in places like coffee houses, and the way that the things like religious expression was popularized through local languages rather than being conducted in Latin. That's something that had emerged from the Reformation 100 or so years earlier. But the idea is that what we witnessed was a kind of an emerging public sphere. So there's the private sphere, the public sphere, and the, if you like, the social sphere, and how these interact. And what Habermas and people who followed him subsequently argue is that we need a robust civic public sphere in order to be able to debate and discuss the key issues that are relevant to the challenges that we face as a society and as a community. So this is kind of asking questions about what it means then to have a democratic media culture. And we're seeing this debate and discussion at the moment with the fake news argument. And one of the suggestions is that we need to think about the challenge to fake news is a kind of sense of transparency. But social media the answer, or is an independent, robust well-founded, institutionally organised, sound public press and public broadcasters who are accountable to civic representatives and the general populace, rather than just being organisations that exploit entertainment and gossip and celebrity news for profit. Is that part of an effective public sphere? So we ask the question, what is active citizenship? What does it mean to play a role in your community? What does it mean? What kind of values do we need to cultivate in order to be able to be, kind of someone who can be trusted, is authentic, who is recognised as having a valuable role to play in society, rather than just, if you like, complaining or obstructing or retaining power just for the sake of retaining power. And this is mapped out in the UK. I mean, in the UK, we think of it in terms of the sector which the community media movement is often pigeonholed in, is what's called the third sector, which is the charity sector. So it's advocacy through social change, through philanthropy and through giving, rather than it being something which is organised by the state on a structural basis. So you've got the market, you've got the state, and then you've got the person or the private individuals, if you like. And I suppose our politics is defined in the last 40 years by a kind of a de-emphasis of the state, a greater emphasis on the role of private individuals and their collective groups, and the marketplace. And our politics kind of seems to swing around between each of these factors. And where does media fit within this? Because much of our policy, our social policy about media, is driven by the profit motive and about the engagement of private businesses to sell products and to seek consumers, to satisfy advertisers, rather than looking at the social needs or in terms of an informed electorate who are able to make decisions and engage in debate, a deliberative democracy, rather than, if you like, a consumer democracy, which is kind of where we might have been. So this really underpins some of the work that has been done about access to community media facilities, such as the community radio movement, which has brought about a kind of a plethora of different stations that are, the centralisation of many corporate organisations that provide media into smaller and smaller numbers of conglomerates is there's a good argument to be made, and this is an argument I'm kind of willing to engage in, is the idea that it produces a centralised market approach. Actually, what it does is it produces a sterile, passive electorate, and we're not being thorough about the decision-making processes. So what is being fueled by the present arrangement is either a sense of indignation or indifference, and not engagement, and not thinking issues through, and not debate, and not deliberation. But it's kind of a way of thinking about information which is controlled, and we've got the whole fake news and elite debate, which is kind of is this used as a smokescreen to divert our attention away from other issues? So we'll look at some other models of how this kind of open, collaborative form of communication exists, in terms of things like open source, and we've touched on this in the past, but also in terms of thinking about how we promote different voices, and voices which are responsive to the emergence of social conditions in their localities and in different ways. So ultimately what we're asking the question really is kind of, what are the tools that we need as a society in order to be able to foster and support a stronger sense of civic debate and discussion? Because people, we started the year looking at the outcome of the Grenfell Tower tragedy, and or crime, as you wish, as it might be described. And so we need to think about, what do we put in its place? so that people feel as if they have a say and that they feel valued in the decision-making process. Right, the notes for this are up on the DMU Commons wiki. Just go to wiki.our.dmu.ac.uk and search for the TECH1502 section. If you want to carry on the conversation, visit talk.our.dmu.ac.uk, start a topic or join in one of the existing topics that's already there.